The global pandemic has brought about a true boom in startups, as the number of new companies around the world has significantly surpassed the indicators of last year. The Financial Times reports, citing official state statistics, that a boom in entrepreneurship in many countries has been recorded against the backdrop of the coronavirus pandemic of 2020. In the United States alone, in July 2020, the number of applications for starting a business reached its all-time heights of 551,657, an increase of 95% compared to the same period in 2019, according to the Census Bureau. This is your host, Swami Sriparambadur, and you are listening to Leadership in Crisis. And we have invited a special guest and a seasoned entrepreneur and a corporate executive, and of course, my good friend, Mr. Kaushik Pillalamarri. As an innovation, technology, and strategy executive, Kaushik has built a reputation for drive, focused business problem solving, and motivational leadership in startup and growth settings across the US, Asia, Europe, and Australia. He is known for adaptability and swift action. Kaushik has led corporate strategy, set product direction, secured partnership, including Amazon, and brought in talent crucial to execution. Well versed in concept through development success, Kaushik's career include CEO, group CEOs, SVP of data and devices and emerging businesses, director and head of product management and development, and senior product lead roles at Smartiply, Universal Industries, Reliance Communications, Verizon Communications, and the Sabre Group, where he led technology, commercialization, market analysis, M&A, business expansion, product strategy, cost-saving measures, P&L authority, and go-to-market strategy, and many, many, many more. He has almost touched all the Ivy Leagues. He has been very much showing his interest in mentoring many of the seasoned leaders in the industry. So Kaushik, welcome to Leadership in Crisis.
Thank you very much, Swami, and thank you for having me on this show.
Oh, it is so privileged to have you, especially you being an entrepreneur. We really want to pick your brain and share some of your thoughts. How do you envision this entrepreneurship, especially in this crisis?
Yeah, we've gone through a lot over the last nearly couple of years now, more than a year and a half. We have had a crisis, a major crisis. And because of that, that led to health issues, economic issues, psychological issues across the world. And so when you talk about leadership during crisis, there are a couple of aspects that come to my mind. On one side, as a leader, what do? You lead definitely upwards, downwards, across. Mm-hmm. But you also lead beyond. By that, what I mean is that you have to be prepared to manage the crisis situation, but you need to go beyond that. You need to prepare for the future as well. So some of the crisis situations may be completely new, like the COVID during our lifetime. And so you may not anticipate that, and you would try to solve the problem, manage the situation. But you should also prepare wherever you're working, right, your organization for the future, so that in future, if there are other situations that may come by, that you're ready for it. But if it is a completely new situation that you never anticipated, then you're in a position to tackle it and emerge from that. So part of it is leadership and how you lead through this crisis situation. The other part of this is the different work streams. There are three major work streams to consider, that a leader is overseeing during a crisis situation. One is the people, the second one is process, and the third one is platform. Okay. So see, when you talk about last year and a half, last 18 months, everybody has gone through a lot. Okay, COVID was a major issue, but in addition to COVID, we had other situations like Black Lives Matter. societal, issues.
Yep.
We had buildings that collapsed. We had shootings. Unfortunately, we had elections. We had travel restrictions, travel ban. We had people lose jobs because companies were not doing well. We had people with health issues, people who couldn't make it because of health issues, other personal crisis situations like elderly care, child care. So many things we've gone through, right? And so I really want to appreciate everybody that endured all this, that basically, struggled to get out of the situations. And also, I want to appreciate all the companies that did their best to ensure that, people's well-being and health are addressed. People come first, right? People come first. So when you talk about people, there are two parts. One is employees and customers. So as a leader, whether you're a corporate executive or entrepreneur or any other kind of leader, right? People come first. So, when you talk about employees, companies have been very, empathetic, with their employees. Leaders led through empathy, and we can talk about that as well. What empathy really means. People were given time off, if it was required. I've seen companies actually deliver food for their employees, friends, and family, help them financially. Some of the employees in companies have had family members that lost jobs. Perhaps the government was helping, but the companies stepped up to help in those situations. HR teams were created just to focus on the employee well-being. And some people were just taking some time off for well-being, reasons, 3 weeks off just to rejuvenate. And so I think the first thing to do is, as part of prioritizing the people, making sure that you let your people know that you care. And business is important, but it comes second. Your well-being is number one. So that's part. Second thing is the customers. You have to deal with your customers who are buying, whether, again, you're an entrepreneur or a corporate executive, customers are buying your products. So what we have seen and what we would need to do in these situations is move from communicating with them for selling purpose to communicating with them to show you care and you're there to help them if they need anything. I think that transformation I've seen a lot of companies do that. Big names like Verizon, Delta Airlines, for example, Carnival Cruise Lines. So many companies actually went through that transformation. So, so people, process, and platform. So we just talked about the different dimensions of people, okay, and their needs and requirements. Where you have to basically, show them you care and take care of them, take care of their needs. But in order to do that, you need to create processes. Okay. So you have seen that, first of all, companies with employees, they have allowed their people to work from home, and to enable that, they had to put processes together, and then everybody works remotely, but you want to hire people through one of the, digital platforms like yours, right? You hire them, but you have to onboard them. Everything happens online these days, right? So how do you put those processes together so rapidly so that you can ensure that your business is continuing to provide service? Companies like Verizon cannot afford to disconnect the customer just because of the crisis, right? Yeah. So they continue to do a great job in first taking care of the people and customers, but putting processes together so that there's continuity, right? People wanted better networks because everybody's working from home at the same time, and suddenly there was this need. Everybody upgraded their networks at home, There are new things that came up in the with regards to processes that all kinds of companies had to do based on what whether you were an entrepreneur in a small company or a large company. Curbside services, right, for malls and even for service companies. They started offering curbside services. For that, you needed to put a process together. You need to put tools together, right? You pretty much need to keep everything up and running. Now, Amazon is another example, which is such a such an important company during these times. They kept you going. They delivered things. They bought new trucks. They hired lots of people so that your needs are met. At the same time, ensuring that the employees are safe and secure. So that's what so that's the second work stream. To support the people, you put all these processes, and to support the processes, you need all these platforms. So, and these platforms are not just to satisfy the current needs to manage the situation, but to also look into the future, to ensure that it's future ready. Sometimes I think people are now feeling that, hey, we have worked from home, although I feel personally that people have been more productive or they work longer hours. On the other side, it has provided some convenience, some benefits, to them. And so maybe it's a win-win situation where working from home becomes the new norm, and going to office is occasional, right? It was the reverse, right? People used to go to office all the time, and you would go home for Friday. On Friday, I'm going to work from home, but it may just switch around, for that. That's what I mean by preparing for the future. There will be new norms created. So again, as I mentioned earlier, at the end of the day, you address the people, processes, and platforms to ensure that the economic aspects, the health aspects, and psychological aspects are taken care of. I want to give you some examples of I think what some companies have done.
Yeah, that would be fantastic.
Yeah. It's all about so I'll give you that example. But when you talk about leadership during the situation, right? And I talked about leading forward as well. A leader needs to cultivate the ability in people to bounce forward. So this is something I read, and I discussed with a few people. Somebody kind of had this discussion with me. People usually say that, hey, once things get back to normal, you bounce back, But this is not about bouncing back. I think it's about bouncing forward. Because bouncing back means that everything is the same. You go back to normalcy. But things will not be the same again. There are families who have been impacted.
Yeah.
There are processes that have changed considerably. There's a new normal. So I think a leader should also ensure that they are cultivating this ability in the team, in the people, to bounce forward, to look into the new future that we are all going to experience. Because it's similar to the clocks and calendars, they don't go back. They don't turn back. They go forward. So
I think before you give the example, I just want to make a comment. You have succinctly said very well the 3P, what we always study in our MBA classes. Now you really remodified and giving a real value, a practical solution of people, process, and platform, which is now the essence of our life. Yeah. And it's almost the way how you mentioned, and I also agree with you that, it's almost like a rebooting of many of the things how we used to do. And so that's why you cannot really go back, because now it is all new features, new enhancement after the reboot, how it all going to function. The entire process have been redefined. So you cannot bring your old policies because it will not work. It is not ready. Yep. And you and I work with Verizon, so we always have that soft corner, but it is really coming up well in spite of this unprecedented times. They are doing pretty good. And one of the key elements you touched is on the people. the empathetic leadership they really shown, because some of the people got so much impacted, their bills and all, they were not able to pay on time, but they kept going without disconnecting, because right now the landline is completely gone. The mobile phone is the key. And if no one has a mobile phone, then the communication is completely disconnected. And without communication, almost it's like, taking oxygen from you.
Yes.
You cannot really live. So that is really awesome. You touched on key things. So I would love to hear more about that examples, what you are going to give. And you are really touching on the critical elements. But after these examples, I want to go back to, as a single entrepreneur, as a sole breadwinner, how that would be affecting if something happens to him, because him or her who have taken that leadership role to run the company, the risk taking is so high. But if that is being impacted because of this unprecedented times, how are they bouncing forward? I will also start using your word now, no more bouncing back. I will always use now bouncing forward. But yeah, let's hear about some examples and then we can go back to that discussion.
Yeah. So while you were just asking me that question, I was trying to look for the definition of what an entrepreneur is. I think that's something that I put together a definition a few months ago, because yeah, I have it here. Anyway, yeah, maybe I'll just define that. Okay, an entrepreneur is an individual who creates a new business, bearing most of the risks, but enjoys most of the rewards. So bearing most of the risks is the key to an entrepreneurship journey. But anyway, yeah, some examples. First of all, when you talk about examples of how people reacted to the crisis, Delta Airlines is a great example. Verizon is a great example. Verizon had, I think, a dedicated HR team just focused on this. It's not just business, it's social well-being. It is moving forward, it's bouncing forward. These were the themes that Verizon publicly announced. And in fact, Verizon got one of the awards the last last year and a half for handling this crisis extremely well. The other company is actually Delta Airlines. So I can think of airlines, I can think of like Amazon, I can think of telecommunications. And there are a lot of other critical needs that we have, like groceries, etc. But I think these three companies kind of surface to me as companies that really reacted and quickly put something together, because you need connectivity, you need things to be delivered at home because you can't go out, and when you can fly, when you can go and travel, you need to do that safely. So Delta Airlines, I think, is one of the companies that is really admired over the last year and a half. And in fact, their revenues got boosted and they led the industry in the last 18 months. The reason is because of change. One of the most important things, in addition to lead, manage, and move forward and think about the future, future readiness, it's also about the ability to change. Yeah. Right? If an organization does not have a high ability to change, a high change score, okay, then they will actually crash during the crisis situation like this. So all the planes were, last year in February or March, all the planes were grounded.
Yep.
Okay.
Like
very similar crisis happened during the 9/11.
Yeah.
Where planes were grounded. So here, for an extended period of time, planes were grounded, and of course, people would be worried about profits and business. That's on Wall Street and stock price. Those were the natural things that come to their mind. But the leader of Delta chose to do something different. They actually ended up thinking about how to be innovative. And there's one thing, I think one thing that business leaders ended up doing during this crisis was they stepped out of their comfort zones and they became problem solvers all of a sudden. The creativity kicked in and they started solving problems. So Delta, they started again, as I said, right, people, right? They started talking to people. Of course, they took care of their employees first. They talked to customers. They said, hey, what would make you travel with us? We want you to travel again. So the customer said, I just feel I don't like somebody sitting next to me. I would love to travel. I will put a mask, helmet, everything. I don't want somebody to sit next to me. I would feel very uncomfortable. Immediately, what Delta did, they put within a week, this happened within a week or two, in over maybe less than a month, they ended up putting a new process and new platforms together to eliminate the middle seat from their system so that they can sell the seats. They start selling the seats without the middle seat. And they vocally, they communicate to everybody that we don't have middle seats. So there's that distance. And so you'll be safer with us. Okay. They knew that eliminating middle seat meant, 30-40% of revenues gone. Right? But they were not thinking about the short term. They were investing in the future. Right. So as soon as they did that, so what happened there, they had to communicate about it. So they had to print these plaques and cards and put it at the airport saying no more middle seats. And they had to make people aware of that. Second thing was they created new processes. They even changed the infrastructure. Where certain terminals, they actually had people come in and reconstruct certain things so that it's safer for the passengers, and passengers would always feel like they're comfortable and there's nobody close by. That's a very big change they made. They put a lot of money. So because of that reason, people started opting for Delta, and people started traveling in Delta Airlines, and they became a very successful airline in the last 18 months. So ability to change, right, was very important for them, and so their revenues went up, and now they earned a lot of points, from the customers that they're going to. Other companies followed, of course, but they couldn't sustain. They couldn't do it at the same rate, at the same pace as Delta. So I think ability to change is important. Now, on the flip side, what not to do? Another example, and this is a public announcement made. Actually, KPMG, I think, is the company where during one of their all hands meetings, one of their senior executives said, "Hey, I want this done. Don't whine about COVID," or something like that. And the company took immediate action. They fired the person because the person was not empathetic.
Correct.
Right? And when you say empathy, right? Empathy, there are a lot of things that come to my mind. I myself sometimes may have almost gotten into impatience, being impatient. During that time, my company was going through a merger or acquisition process. We required the government, the IRS, the banks, and we required all the paperwork to be done. And it was very complicated. So I would be on calls talking to the bank, but these banks would keep you on hold for 2 hours, 3 hours. I was on calls for 2-3 hours. Of course, I may have multitasked, but some of these options don't even have a callback option. So hey, the line is 3 hours long. If you want us to call back, please enter your number. They didn't even have that option, right? So it was painful. So and then finally, when somebody would answer, then they would say, "Sir, you reached the wrong department." And at that time, you want to really blow up, And but then what? One big part of empathy is leading with kindness, because you don't know what they're going through. Okay? So that's a big part of empathy. Another part of empathy, I think, would be putting yourself in the other person's shoes. Okay, always treat people the way you would like to be treated. It's an extension of what I just said, leading with kindness, because you don't know, right? But putting yourself in other people's shoes is very important. That's what a leader should do. Treat them the way you want to be treated during any situation. And the third thing that comes to my mind is the concept of, whenever, extracting things out of people versus, hey, I'm here to offer you what you need, right? So whether it's businesses or friends, family, anybody, right? Your mindset should shift, to being there for somebody, so that you can offer them what they need, rather than trying to extract it out of them. It's always about, I want something from you. I think that mind shift has to happen, if you want to be empathetic. And finally, for businesses, I think it is serving lives, people and life. That is probably a higher priority. And if you do that, profit is a byproduct. And so these are the four elements of empathy that I feel that every leader should get this ingrained in their minds, and when dealing with people.
I think empathetic leadership, what you mentioned, is so crucial. As an entrepreneur or a corporate leader, we always think, hey, we need to have a growth mindset, which is absolutely inevitable. But in the situations like the COVID, we need to have a more empathetic mindset. And as you rightly said, we need to really be there. Just sometimes, just be there, saying, hey, I am here to support you, whatever may be the situation. Because sometimes, I do a lot of these town hall meetings just without any agenda, because I just want to tell the team, hey, I am here, just tell us, other than the business, what else you have a problem. Because almost every person in this world, either directly or indirectly, are impacted by the COVID, maybe their own family or indirect family. And sometimes, as you mentioned about that KPMG example, we need empathetic leaders who can understand, because people are already going through the painful process. Now you're talking about the revenues, the customer losses, or the new acquisition. All these things will become secondary when people are really, going through the difficult times. Their life is in danger, either theirs or their family. They need something. It's almost like COVID is giving a great example of supply of oxygen. So all this empathetic leadership is giving a more and more boosting their oxygen, so that they feel comfortable focusing what is their primary. Then of course they can take the next level to take it over. I mean, that's awesome examples what you have given, and what are the great things you have given. One last thing before we wrap up is, in this unprecedented times, the 18 months are over, but we are seeing more and more entrepreneurs are coming up. And why do you think, and what is the advice you want to give it to a person who really want to become an entrepreneur in these difficult times?
Yeah, first of all, based on history, what we learned was that every crisis became a catalyst for entrepreneurship. You take an example of the financial crisis that actually ended up creating the fintech industry, right? So like that, even today we are seeing how tourism has changed, how travel has changed, how groceries, delivery of groceries, and even in the case of, I have a good friend who works with the Carnival Cruise Lines, and they're building technologies for contact tracing. If you're with different people, and when somebody falls sick, then they would immediately know who all they met within a second, and they can go and treat them, right? Things like that. And so there's so many new innovations that are coming up. Heartbeat monitoring, another friend of mine, and it's unthinkable, right? These are things we may never have thought that there may be a need for this. At the beginning of COVID, what happened was that there was this. Doctors would go, traditionally the doctors would check the heartbeat, with that instrument. But now, you can't, you can't touch people, or you can, you have all the masks or whatever, right? So you cannot, the doctors have the helmet, so they can't put a stethoscope, right? So they came up with a small speaker at the end of the stethoscope so that they can hear the heartbeat louder, things like that. All these are different innovations that came up. So, well, let me take a moment here to quickly define entrepreneurship. I found that definition, okay? That I wrote based on experience, of course. So entrepreneurship is about conceiving an original and disruptive innovation. So original and disruptive innovation to solve real-world problems, skillfully designing and building an ecosystem with people through digital mastery, courageously taking the financial risks with a conviction to create and extract value with utmost integrity and flawlessly delivering great products that make a difference in the lives of people. So this is a loaded definition. This is loaded because it comes from the bottom of my heart, because we as entrepreneurs went through a lot. There are great times when you first get the first check, from the customer. Here's your order, and there are times when your technology fails you, and you need to come up with an alternative, and your money is running out, near death moments, right? It's a great journey. For me, entrepreneurship is all about, it's the same feeling that you would get, when the billionaires went to the space for a few seconds and came back. That feeling, not everybody gets that opportunity, but that feeling is great. It's enormous. It's hard to explain. You'll have to experience it. Okay. Why I had to put this definition is because I think that there are innovations. There's a need. Therefore, you innovate. I made a lot of companies nowadays because I'm also advising some startups. A lot of these companies, when they pitch, they have ideas, but for me, ideas have to be original. Yeah. They have to be disruptive. They have to be unique. Okay, not only original ideas, but they're unique. The difference is that it's something that other people cannot replicate very easily. Original would be you're doing it for the first time and nobody has done it, but unique is, hey, nobody else can do it quickly because you've protected it, or it's difficult, or it's some secret sauce. Okay, such that it disrupts the industry and nobody can match you. At least for the first 2 to 3 years, they can't match you. So that's a very important thing. The second thing is that digital mastery is another aspect of entrepreneurship. And digital mastery is all about using digital technology to solve problems. Okay, it has two aspects to it. One is a command on all the technologies out there. Today's entrepreneur doesn't matter what background you're from. You're a computer science engineer, you're a biologist, you're an English major, you're a marketing person, right? I recommend everybody should have a good understanding of the technologies. What is IoT? What is AI? What is blockchain? Everybody has to know that, just like what is biology, what is physics, what is algebra. Okay, everybody has to know that, because only then a lot of entrepreneurs, maybe 1/3 to 50% of entrepreneurs are experienced people, but a large number of them are inexperienced people. They just get into a situation and they become entrepreneurs. So I think that everybody has to strive to get to know all these concepts, and technologies, so that whatever situation they're in, they can use that knowledge to come up with a solution to solve the problem. Okay. Otherwise, you're not going to solve problems uniquely, or you're not going to solve real world problems if you don't have an understanding of these technologies and how they work. But the other aspect is not just knowing about these technologies, but how do you make it happen in real life? Okay. What does it take to put a team together, motivate them to make things happen? How do you go and attract your first customer and get the first check? But all these, this is the other part of it. So there's a business side of it. So having a digital mastery is not just about knowing all the digital technologies, but how do you actually go and make it happen? Because there are people who are so smart, they know everything in these areas, but they are not able to make it happen because there are other aspects. There are people aspects, there are process aspects, there are leadership aspects, there's empathy, there a lot of things. In a startup company, one of the most important things is people, right? You have less number of resources, scarcity there. And each person is wearing so many hats. Yep. And you can't afford to lose anyone. People are enjoying their job because they like what they do, but if they don't enjoy the leadership, they're going to leave.
Absolutely.
So there are all these other skills for digital mastery. Courageously taking financial risk. If you're not into risk taking, don't be an entrepreneur. Just go and be a businessman, a business person, right? A businessman or woman, business person. So risk taking is a very big part of it. So let's say that you have an original idea that's disruptive, and you have digital mastery, and you're taking the financial risk to go and make it happen, but you have to do it with integrity. There were a lot of times when we ourselves, when certain goods were being shipped to certain countries and they were stopped at the customs, first time it happened, it was all okay. But a few months later, it happened, it would get stopped and they say, hey, you need this certification, you need that certification. And then you would be so tempted, because it has to be delivered to the customer, you need revenue. You would be so tempted to just, do what they want so that you can, get the goods through the customs. But you know what? We never did that. We said, send it back. We will get the certificate you need. So I think that's very important because, of course, integrity is all about doing the right thing when nobody's watching, even when nobody's watching. So yes, I think that's a big part of being an entrepreneur. And the last thing, flawless. Okay, whatever you do it flawlessly. The execution by Verizon, the execution by Amazon, the execution by Delta Airlines, it was flawless. They did it, they were quick, they changed rapidly, but they did it flawlessly. To a great extent, they did it flawlessly. And then where they could not do their best, people were empathetic to them because they knew they were caring, right? So I would say these are the core elements of being an entrepreneur. I hope that
No, I think you gave a lot of ingredients and you have put it in a very good perspective. Now I feel why you really wrote that definition, which is so important, because it really came out of your hard work and experiences. It is really almost like a set in stone with blood by you based on your experiences. And these are all very critical elements. And I completely agree with you. One has to have like a foundation principles of entrepreneurship is knowing the digital mastery and then connect that with your business acumen. Otherwise, only knowing the knowledge but not executing properly is absolutely no good. And integrity and ethics are very, very vital because, as you rightly said, do what is right even no one is watching is very, very important, because that shows your attitude and that really puts you away in a unique position for all the customers. And that's why they really love it, because the customer service is important, but sometimes you have to be very transparent and truthful if something cannot be delivered, because sometimes it is beyond your hands. As you said, customs, if it is stopping, you did not envision, and some of these government rules are completely new, which you don't know. And today's world, the rules are being added on the fly because of the COVID restriction. They say, hey, CDC guidelines have come. By the time you travel from home to the airport, the rules might have changed. So you have to deal with the change. And dealing with the change in a right approach swiftly, like how Delta did it, is awesome. So you have really gave a lot of ingredients to, keep reminding some of those key qualities and also embracing those qualities on a regular basis. So thank you for giving fantastic insights on leadership bites from the corporate and the entrepreneur spirit. So thank you so much, Kaushik, for giving a fantastic information, and we will be again in touch with you.
Yeah. May I share one last thought?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. When you talk about integrity, right? Again, it's for the entrepreneurs who are existing entrepreneurs or who want to be, who get inspired to be an entrepreneur. Integrity and trust are very, very important in an entrepreneur, because when you're taking the risk, you're not just taking the risk for yourself. You are motivating people to leave other jobs to join you.
Yes.
You're obligated to your team because you attracted them to join you, getting a startup salary, and you're obligated to them. And same thing is your investors. They're investing a lot of money in you and trusting you. So integrity is very important because in my startup, I cared about that $1 given by the investor more than I cared about my own dollar. Because I don't want anybody to think that I wasted the money on this person, or same thing with the team, right? So that's why when you do something wrong, nobody's watching, but you do something wrong and somebody catches that, and then you get fired. or you behave in a very bad way, like one of those leaders who said, don't whine about COVID, right? Then you're not just a bad example, but you're failing the team that trusted in you. So that I cannot take, So we have to be true to yourself. We have to have high integrity. And these few statements that takeaways from this, the theme that you have is societal well-being versus profits, developing creative responses with scarce resources, ability to change rapidly, based on the situation, business leaders getting out of their comfort zones to become problem solvers, staying true to your purpose, being proactive versus reactive, building trust with everybody, especially with your customers and employees, that you care for them, and most importantly, investing in others. That means helping others. You're there to serve somebody's needs instead of trying to extract something out of them. So these are, I think, these are the elements of this whole theme of leadership in crisis, in my opinion.
Thank you. So it is really nice to give a summarizing takeaway. So it is really important. But I just want to recap one of the elements you mentioned. As an entrepreneur, you can probably start a company, and once you are in, you cannot go back. As you rightly said, you are completely giving that motivation to all your employees. So your integrity and how you are working is important, because a lot of the people believe in you. They left their corporate jobs or their comfort zones, and they came and joined with you, and then investors are investing in you. So you cannot go back now, or you cannot do anything wrongfully, something, right? Because there are so many people are dependent on you. So you are always have to drive in a righteous way, going back to our Vedic scriptures, as Lord Rama says, the righteousness is the only one which will keep you always above all these problems. And you will find the solution if your focus is there with a good intention of helping others or investing others, what you mentioned. So thank you so much for summarizing all those takeaways and giving a great detailed examples for all our listeners. And I think we need to do one more episode with you to have more nourishment for these entrepreneurs, that ingredients are very much important. So thank you, Kaushik, for wonderful takeaways.
Yep, thank you. I enjoyed this, and I'm ready for another session. I'm passionate about what we have achieved, and